Springboks 16, New Zealand 33. And the Boks come crashing back to reality because they just didn't arrive in that second half. And they just did not take their opportunities. It's not good enough. It really isn't good enough. So much did go well at some point during the evening. Scrum dominance was there. In the first half, we went to halftime feeling like we were completely in control of the game. But we only led by 1 point. And the big takeaway is you have to take your chances. We did not take our chances. And now we find ourselves on the end of a really, really poor performance and a really, really bad result. And it's not good enough. It's going to have to get a lot better. You know, that is not a case of we just kind of came short. We got outplayed, outclassed in the second half. And the worrying thing as well is, in a certain degree, we got outmuscled in the second half. The scrum dominance disappeared and we could not find a solution. And when we did have the scrum dominance, we did not take our chances. That game could have gone elsewhere. I'm not saying that, you know, X, Y, Z, we could have won that game, because I think that last 20 minutes was really, really poor. However, there were places there we could have come back, and we didn't. And it was a big concern, I think, in terms of the fact we didn't have a plan B, the fact that we couldn't turn the momentum, the fact that when we had all that momentum, we did nothing with it. We couldn't do anything with it. We couldn't conjure up opportunities. We couldn't conjure up, you know, different chances and the likes of that. We couldn't bring somebody on to make a big difference. And Dave Rennie will be sitting in, I mean, the Rassie press conference is going to be interesting. But Dave Rennie will be sitting there thinking, well, we prepared perfectly. And the All Blacks, it was an interesting game because the All Blacks weren't their full flow running selves. You know, if you go and watch that game, they got it tactically so right. But the big thing that the All Blacks did, I think, so well, is that they hung in there. They weathered the storm. When they were under lots of pressure, they didn't panic. That, I think, was a really, really important part. They did not panic. And they waited, and they hung in there. And then there was a simple scrum in about the 53rd minute when the Boks had all that dominance, didn't take the points. New Zealand won a scrum, got themselves all the way back to, and after that, it was one-way traffic. But don't get sucked into the whole All Blacks ran the Boks off their feet, because for 65 minutes, that wasn't actually the case. But they hung in there. They matched the Boks scrum time in the second half. Physically, they pitched up as well in the second half. And their error rate was so much better. That, I think, was a huge part. The Boks, you look at the knock-ons, the silly mistakes, discipline across the game as well. In the first half, we started off poorly, grew into the game, started getting a bit of dominance. We didn't get the points from it. When the All Blacks suddenly swung that momentum, they took their chances quickly. And that's how they're scoring 5 tries, where the Boks are scoring 1. You know, and there's going to be now a huge week of reflection, because it's simply not good enough. You know, and that's the thing. You know, we talk about the tests were going to be epic. It was a good test. I mean, let's not deny it was not entertaining. You know, and as a Boks fan, I'm shattered by how poor we were. But it's not. It's no longer. There's no point having that dominance. And there were a couple of guys who put in some big shifts. But there's no point having that dominance if you can't translate it into points. It is simply that easy. If you want to really break that down, it's about taking the points. Whether that means taking the 3 or finding different ways to score, you know, we've got the players who can get over the advantage line. We've got the players who can create things. We've got to back them. We've got to find ways of scoring points. It really is that simple. You know, in the first half, there were a couple of really good runs, very positive, on the front foot. You know, and we scored a good try against Andre Esterhuizen. But personally, I think, you know, Sasha didn't really manage to grab hold of that. But we also didn't give the ball enough to in spaces. Even when we had earned the right to go wide, the likes of that, we didn't manage to use it enough. You know, this was not a case of us going to the kicking game, New Zealand not going to the kicking game, and that's where it won. Ironically, New Zealand kicked a lot this evening. Probably more than they've kicked all year, actually. But they won the kicking contest, and that was a huge part of it. You know, I mean, Damian Williams in the first half was catching high balls. Cheslin Colby was catching high balls, and things were going really well. We were finding that momentum. As soon as that stopped being the case, we just didn't know what to do. We didn't know how to swing the momentum. And I'm very interested to see what the change is going to be in the personnel and the tactics. If you look at some of the very interesting stats, by the way, in terms of New Zealand were quicker and New Zealand had the slowest ruck speed this evening than they've had the entire year. we had a better ruck speed percentage between 0 and 3 and a higher ruck speed between 3 and 6. New Zealand had 25% of the rucks with 6+ seconds. They actually slowed the game down and beat us by doing it. You know, that was the weird thing. We got almost like beaten by our own game to a certain degree. They didn't necessarily dominate us in the scrums and the likes of that. But let me give you a stat. The Springboks entered the 22 11 times at an average point scored of 0.9. The All Blacks entered the 22 9 times at an average point scored of 3.6. That's almost 4 times. That's the difference. That stat tells you everything you need to know. We got into the 22 more times than the All Blacks did, but scored less than a point per entry. If we had scored at 1.5 points, we probably win that game. We scored 2 points per entry. You know, we probably win that game. And that needs to be the discussion point over here. It's not about, you know, oh, we try to rely on the scrum too much. We carved up. We were in the places we wanted to be. You know, we were in the areas. We had the space. We had the dominance we wanted, but nothing to show from it. And I think, you know, if you're sitting there, I'll be looking at Amani Liebach, for example, and I'll be sitting there thinking we've got to find a way of getting him into that, because we did not have enough people to get us over the advantage line and to carve out opportunities. You know, I thought that our scrum halves didn't manage to really get what we sort of used to it. Sasha, I think, struggled to get into the game. And it was a huge wake-up call. I mean, talk about coming crashing down to reality. But sometimes you need that wake-up call. The question is now, if you want to win the series, you're going to have to win 3 tests in a row. And this is the thing. This is what makes it such a big series. Now, you're going to have to win 3 tests in a row. I'm not sure if we have it in us. I said if we could win the first test, I reckon we could potentially lose the second and go 1-1. To now win 3 tests in a row, it becomes the mission impossible. Can we do it? Of course we can do it. Will we do it? Well, that's a whole different kettle of fish, isn't it? You know, and let's look at some of the stats in terms of where the game was won and lost. Possession-wise, pretty 50-50. Lineouts for the Boks got a bit better, but a scrum which dominated the first half. But New Zealand, by the way, they lost 3 scrums in the first half and didn't lose a scrum after that. And I think that was a huge part of it. New Zealand tackled very well, defended very well. You've got to give it to them. They did defend very, very well. And I think frustrating that if you look at some of our tries conceded, that they were very simple. But penalty rate not good for the Boks, especially in the danger area. And then, you know, 2 late yellow cards. So, I mean, if you look at the try line, look at the timeline, it'll tell you a story, because yellow card Marco van Staden, yellow card for Kobus Reinach, and that led to late tries at the end of the day. You know, so we had a try before that by Luke Jacobson, and after that, yellow card, another try. So even if you take away the 7 points from that try, we went down to 13, because that was a simple numbers issue, and you bring that back 26 points to 16, which is probably more where the game was in many ways, it's not good enough, and we weren't really there. So lots to ponder, unfortunately, and lots to think about for Rassie in the team to come. Big press conference coming, by the way. We'll have that press conference on the channel, so check it out in a little bit. But let me know what your thoughts were of that game. Very frustrating, and a huge week ahead in terms of how do we respond to that? That's the question.